Hello, thank you for joining us today at the NARI of Minnesota February chapter monthly meeting. My name is Barrick Steenledge and I am the president of NARI Minnesota. I'm also co-owner of Anchor Builders and I'm happy to be here with you today. And yes, I do have farming in my background. I'll let that soak in for the ones that appreciate a good dad joke. I want to thank everyone for attending this event. We have an exciting interactive program tonight. Before I turn over the Zoom microphone to our featured speakers, we have some announcements. As this is a chapter meeting, we will be sharing chapter information. Tonight's presentation showcases two past presidents sharing their wisdom to help all of us succeed. We are grateful to them. Speaking of success, the regional CODI winners have been announced. Minnesota had a great showing, as we usually do. Here are some of the winners. Let's wait for the slideshow to catch up. All right, thank you. Give me the opportunity to have a little drink. All right. Bob Michaels, residential additions from 100,000 to 250. Congratulations. Next, we have Gordon James, residential interiors over 500,000. We have Holly Home Renovations, historic renovation for over 250,000. J3 Renovations and Design, Element over 30,000. John Kramer and Sons, entire house over 1 million. Live It Site plus structure, landscape design, outdoor living over 250,000. We have Mantis Design and Build, residential kitchen, 600,000 to 100,000. And then we have a double winner here, our own board member, Minnesota Fine Homes and Remodeling, entire house 250,000 to 500,000, and entire home 500,000 to 750,000. That's great. New Spaces, residential interiors 100,000 to 250,000. Quality Cut Design and Remodel, residential additions over 250,000. Southview Design, landscape design, outdoor living over 250,000. Congratulations to all our Minnesota regional CODI winners, and we look forward to hearing about the national winners coming up in April. Speaking of national will announce the winners at the annual conference in Savannah, Georgia on April 4th through the 7th. If you haven't been, it's a great event. We will begin accepting submissions for the local CODI projects for this year in 4 months. Start compiling your materials and photos now. It's going to be an exciting CODI Awards season again. We will be in person in St. Paul on the 10th of November. The same venue as last year. Minneapolis-St. Paul home tour is now powered by NARI of Minnesota. There's still time to get a house in the tour for the spring 2022 tour. We are especially interested in homes in the St. Paul and eastern side of Twin Cities. We have a lot on this side. We're always looking for more on the St. Louis Park, Minneapolis side, but we're eager for some additional ones in St. Paul. Contact MSP Home Tour at narimn.org to get more information or say, hey, I want to put a home on the tour. We have the following upcoming events. Our first in-person event for this year are coming up and we can't wait. April 12th, bowling has been rescheduled. We will be at Barrows in Eden Prairie. We're looking forward to finally having that. May 10th, monthly meeting at Bunker Hills. Ron Wirtz from the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis will be there printing and handing out money. Wait, I guess he couldn't do that part. Instead, he will be talking about the labor shortage and how it impacts the construction industry. Also a worthy topic. On June 14th, Firm Night at Hallmark Building Supplies. On July 19th, thanks to our Eagle sponsor, ProSource Wholesale, our annual golf outing and games on the grass will be taking place at Preswick in Woodbury again. We enjoy playing at Preswick, and the games on the grass portion will be exciting this year. Registration will be open within the week. August 9th, Firm Night at Dow Tile in Plymouth. Great event. We're looking forward to it. September 13th, soccer at Alliance Stadium. Go United FC. The last time we were at Alliance Field, everyone had a great time. Perfect opportunity to cheer on our home team, reconnect, and get outdoors. Registration will be open by the end of June, if not sooner. October 11th, our annual meeting. We will have Dan Stoltz of Spire talking to us about leadership and the economy. A lot on that topic. We will be at Lumber Exchange in Minneapolis. Our next box hour is on June 9th, and the topic is how to start a roundtable. Our lunchbox hour presentations are from noon until 1 on Wednesdays, and they are free to members. We have several in the works, including what it looks like to serve on the board or a committee, how to submit a CODI, and how to submit for a pillar. The CODI nominating committee is actively looking for board members for 2022. If you're interested in serving on the board, let me know or reach out to the office. Serving on the board is a learning opportunity, a way to work on your leadership skills, to meet amazing people in the industry, and to give back while also helping the industry move forward. I've had an amazing experience to date, and we hope you consider putting yourself forward for an opportunity to serve. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the member spotlight for this month's meeting. Sarah Reddish, market representative from Cambria, currently zooming in from Grand Rapids, Minnesota. There are some positives from COVID. I'll turn it over to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Barrick. My name is Sarah Reddish, and I'm a market representative with Cambria. I've been in my role with Cambria for about 6 months. I'm married to my patient husband, Cameron, for the last 10 years. We have a 13-year-old lab named Atticus, who is our second born, but our firstborn child is our son, Brooks, who is a sophomore in Andover High School and plays for the varsity hockey team, which is the reason why I'm sitting in Grand Rapids right now. As you get to know me, if I'm not talking about Cambria, I'm likely going to be talking about hockey. It's just something that's always on my mind. And if I'm not talking about Cambria or hockey, you're likely to find me making a TikTok or doing something fun on social media to bring fresh light to our Cambria presence. my role to Cambria is new, but when I jumped into my role, Michelle Maliner, who is a NARI member and someone who I consider a peer and a mentor, came to me and approached me and said, not only should I join NARI, but I also should jump into the membership committee. Her recommendation and her explanation of her experiences made it a very easy decision to say yes to. And as I've navigated joining NARI and the membership committee, it's been incredible to see the amount of passion that its members and leadership share in our industry. We all know that our industry moves very quickly and we need to move with it. Having passionate and established members in NARI provides an excellent resource for someone like me who's just dipping their toe into their new role in our industry. It also gives me much credibility. Being associated with a respected organization like NARI shows my existing and future business partners that I come to them with integrity. And while being able to network with our professionals is a great way to build my business, I also find that the mentoring and educational opportunities afforded to me within NARI will grow me as well. The opportunities for CEUs, roundtables, and additional seminars keep us ahead of industry trends and make us that much more valuable to our partners. It's really no mystery that the more you give to something, the more you get out of it. For example, I have a Peloton in my living room. It's very easy to look at it and say, it's too expensive, it's a waste of time, and it's a waste of money. However, if I get on that Peloton every day and I'm putting the effort into it, I'm getting so much more out of it. Life, it's so much the same with that as it is with NARI. As I found myself diving headfirst in and trying to absorb the culture and knowledge from the leadership, the output value of my membership and dedication to the membership committee is bringing so much value to me and my business. In attending my first Cody Awards this year, it was so wonderful to see the caliber and the amount of pride that NARI members show in their work. I look so forward to continuing to meet each and every one of you as we are able to have more in-person and Zoom meetings. As we've mentioned, I'm attending from Grand Rapids, Minnesota. I'm engaging because we have the power to, even from far away, and reach people we sometimes couldn't connect with locally. I can't express also how welcome the membership committee has been and made me feel welcome from the jump off. How much passion and how hard they work to make sure that NARI is filled with business partners who align with the same standards is very apparent from the moment I joined. Being an ambassador for NARI comes very naturally. We should all be proud to stand in front of a group that stands behind its ethics and members every day. Thank you again all for being here. I can't wait to meet each and every one of you. And I now have the pleasure of introducing Jerry Zemecki, owner of J3 Renovation and Design and chairperson of our Programs and Education Committee. Welcome, Jerry.
Good evening. Welcome. Thank you, Sarah. That was very, very insightful. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be here tonight. I wish we were in person, but we're slowly working back towards that for all of our upcoming events. Tonight, we have two distinguished guests to talk about what it means to be a remodeler and what are some of the nuggets of wisdom that they can share with us to improve our businesses. Little housekeeping at the bottom of your screen, as we're all familiar. There is a question and answer button on the bottom. As we go through the evening, if you have any questions, please go ahead and enter them into there, and we will have time at the end of their presentation to answer any questions and have a discussion about that. Our guest this evening, first one up is John Miller. John is the owner of Waldenwood, a design build remodeling company specializing in working with clients with distinctive homes. John is a second career remodeler, started the company in the late 80s. He currently guides a team of 9. Waldenwood was one of the first design build remodeling companies in the state to have a full-time award-winning certified interior designer on staff. Miller has been active in the NARI Association leadership, including a term as president of NARI Minnesota. On the national level, he has also served 3 terms as a regional vice president for the association, responsible for the North Central U.S. territory. John is a NARI certified remodeler, universal design certified professional, and a master certified remodeler, industry's top designation of professionalism, experience, and commitment to ethical conduct. John knows his stuff. It's going to be great to hear from him today. In addition to being named an industry leader of the year twice by NARI Minnesota, John has been interviewed for remodeling articles in Lake Style Magazine, Remodeling Magazine, Remodelers Journal, the Wall Street Journal, Minnesota Public Radio, and WCCO Radio. He's also played a leading role in the nationally televised Home Savvy series. Miller has been a speaker at the Minnesota Home and Patio Show, numerous NARI events, as well as national gatherings like NKBA, the NKBA convention in Florida, and the NARI annual meeting in California. John is married to Sandy, has 2 grown adult sons, Matthew of San Francisco and Justin of Minneapolis, and they live in their 80-year-old, never quite finished remodeled home in Shorewood. John describes the place as a real-life Waldenwood laboratory for carpenter practice and product testing. So I love that. I love that. Sandy, being a bit more pragmatic, sees the house a bit differently, as he says, often threatening to hire a real remodeler to get the projects completed. I think we all have had those feelings at some point. John's personal interests include warm places with palm trees, mountain climbing, and photography. Our second guest this evening is Jerry Roloffs. Jerry started working on job sites at the age of 12, so I think that was just last year, my understanding, Jerry. Sliding down the roof on his butt, trying to get 3 nails in each 1x10 on the rafter, hauling out the scrap and managing the scrap burn pile. With so much life-altering experience, he left home for college to study music, of all things. That led him to a different career in industry until 1979, when he joined his father's home building company, Ken Roloffs Construction, where he and his father did small remodeling projects. At his father's urging, he joined the program committee of the Minneapolis Builders Association, followed by serving on the board of directors of the Homeowners Warranty Program, treasurer, and then chair of the Parade of Homes Corporation, founding member of the Remodelers Home Showcase, and later its chairman. John was also president of the Remodelers Council at BATSI. His company has won several Roma Awards in '94 and '95, and was named a Big 50 remodeler in '96, where he and his team graced the cover of Remodeling Magazine. Quite an achievement. Congratulations. I did not know that till just now. He bought out the company, changed its name to Roloffs Remodeling and Renovation Incorporated, and joined NARI in '98. He has served on the board of directors from 2001 till 2007 and was acting president in 2004. He's also wrote a column for Builders Digest, the monthly publication of BATSI, starting as president of the council in '92, entitled Slightly Out of Square, in which he promised to never talk about the remodeling industry, but only his journey through it. I love that concept, John. The last column was published in January of '99. Jerry is married to Linda and has 2 sons. Their home is in Minnetonka, built in '88 and in need of some loving kindness. Jerry often promises tomorrow. He has maintained his interest and ability in many aspects of music and occasionally indulges in it. So it's great to welcome both of you here this evening. To all of our guests joining in, as you can see from those introductions, there's a lot of industry experience and talent and knowledge here to be had. And gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Jerry. You know, NARI, for its existence throughout the years, has had an emphasis on education, on speakers, on hands-on demonstrations, on seminars. But tonight, we want to share more informally. Basically, lessons from the College of Hard Knocks and Crusty Socks. Stuff that Jerry and I wish we would have known back then that really might have made a difference. We hope by sharing, we might be able to save you a wound or two, or at the very least, uncover a few things that might deepen your enjoyment of this industry. Behind me, you've got Mount Rainier. Some of you might recognize it. It's located between Yakima, Washington and Seattle, Washington. It's about 100 miles from Yakima. And from Yakima, where I used to live, you can see its majesticness and its snow cap and its green tree line, but you really can't see the mountain unless you set foot on it. You don't realize how tall the trees are or how big the meadows are and the alpine lakes, how beautiful they are, reflecting the image of the mountain. You don't see the glacial crevasses waiting to claim another climber's life. Unless you climb to the summit, you have no idea that it's not a jagged peak, but it's a bowl filled with snow where lava once spewed forth. Tonight, we'd like to pretend that we're all together hikers on that mountain. And that mountain is our remodeling career, or in the case of vendors, your position with the company. Imagine this group of us kind of sitting around a campfire at the base of the mountain. It's dusk when one of the fellow hikers pipes up and says, maybe, Jerry, Z.
I'm here. I can't get my video to come back on.
Okay.
Yes, obviously you guys have hiked this remodeling mountain for decades, and we're excited to hear what you have to say. What are some of the things that you've experienced and learned about yourselves, owning a company, the larger world context around all this, and the end game as you reach the summit, so to speak, on this journey?
So I'll start. John, why the heck did you do this? What brought you in here? What was your reasoning, and when you went through the door, what did it feel like?
Well, I guess I can sum it up real easy on my entry. I was a minister in my first career for almost 20 years. I took a sabbatical leave from the church to get some refreshment. I went to a summer session at Oxford, England, and spent the school year at Princeton, and thought I was better equipped for ministry. No job, no income, and no hope when the end of that school year came around. I tried everything. I sent dozens of resumes to churches, to colleges, in hopes that I could find a teaching job, all kinds of places. We were getting kicked out of the school housing apartment that we were living in with my wife and 2 kids. We had no place to go. We took up my brother's offer to come and live in his basement of his house in Chaska. We searched and searched and searched for jobs to no avail. I finally ended up with a temp job doing some consulting at the room and board store office here in Golden Valley. That job was short-lived, but along the way, I heard about the possibility of the corporate management going ahead with remodeling each of the stores, and I think they had about 4 or 5 at that point. I didn't have any place to go. I didn't have a job once that consulting part was over. So I said to the management, would you mind if I put an offer in on doing the remodel of one of your stores? Can we try it out for one of the stores and see how it goes? And I would imagine they just kind of snickered and laughed and wondered what this guy was talking about. But I went from that first store and spent a year with the company remodeling store after store, and eventually had enough moxie to kind of go off on my own. Started remodeling for my parents and my relatives and my friends and anybody I could find a remodeling job with. But it led into the industry, and the rest has been the pilgrimage down that path. I was kind of embarrassed, I think, early on, not to really be using my training and my education and not making use of the thousands of dollars that I spent on postgraduate work. But I realized that it's not so important how you end up in this industry, but rather to realize we're an amalgamation of all of our previous experiences, our education, our jobs. And we really need to celebrate what we're bringing to the remodeling table. We're shaped by all that has come before us. You've got Mount Rainier in the back here. I tried to climb it a number of times, each time training for about a year. I finally made it to the summit on one of the attempts. It was exhilarating. I was standing up on top with my arms raised up in triumph. An hour later, with 60 pounds on my back, we're on our way down. I was roped to my partner. He was in the lead. we came upon a 5-foot wide crevasse. Like we were taught, we each planted, or I planted my ice axe and braced myself while my partner jumped to the other side. We were roped together. Once on the other side, he did the same thing. He planted his ice axe. I froze. I couldn't jump. I was mentally and physically exhausted from the climb and the steepness of coming down. All I could focus on was the bottom of that crevasse, which I couldn't see. Fear took over. I was petrified. Tears started running down because I couldn't jump, I couldn't get to the other side, and I couldn't get down. You know, one of the other realizations that I've made is that life and remodeling are about finding our way across the crevasses of life. Each crevasse forms something new in our own lives, and it's transmitted, whether we realize it or not, into our remodeling companies. We carry some interesting baggage into our companies, don't we? I grew up with a fix-it type father. I can't ever remember a serviceman or a carpenter or anybody coming into my house to do some project. My father always did it, whether it be moving the garage from one side of the house to the other, or tearing down the walls, or putting up the sheetrock, or whatever it was. My dad did it. If he didn't know how, he didn't let on. He just pretended to move forward and off he went. All I knew was that we were supposed to fix it. Some weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, I was working on a drawing on chief architect. And for some reason, the drawing program wasn't doing exactly what I wanted it to do. And I knew that I could fix it. So I spent hours, literally hours, trying to make that program do what it was supposed to do. And I couldn't figure out why I couldn't do it. I knew that there was a way, and I can find it if I just stay with it. That was my mentality from growing up. We can do it. A couple hours before I was supposed to give a presentation using that same plan, I was in desperation. I can't get it fixed. I can't make it work. What am I going to do? Call the helpline. Do you know, in less than 5 minutes, they were able to fix that flaw, and it worked just perfectly. You know, sometimes it's the reticence in asking for help that we might be just missing out on something great. And Jerry, what's your pilgrimage in this industry been like? I'm going to let a little cat out of the bag and say that you're somewhat unlike Miller, who sent out tons of resumes. You've never sent out one in your entire life. Isn't that true?
That's true. Otherwise, my journey is just like yours. I have never filled out a job application. I've only, I sang an audition when I was 18 years old. And I worked for that company for the next 11 years. I sang a second audition that lasted for 16 bars. And the guy had seen me before. And he said, okay, would you like to be Jesus? And I said, I will. And I spent 14 months as Jesus and Jesus Christ Superstar. So from that, it's a logical transition into remodeling with all those same challenges. I got into it because I needed a change. I'd spent so long in the entertainment industry that anything that I attained was entirely ethereal. Music ends when the song stops. And I was desperately looking for something that I could accomplish and do something today and come back and look at it tomorrow and build on top of that the next day and that sort of thing to give me a sense of accomplishment, something I desperately needed. And I knew who I was. I am an extreme introvert. I'm painfully shy. I've always liked puzzles because they lead to solutions. I've always liked Monopoly because it's always been extremely important to me to keep score. And I never liked being a puppet. I always wanted to be the puppeteer. Yeah, there were times that I was bossy and a jerk, but mostly I like to call the shots. I'm a big fan of perspective. I like looking at how things were and how they evolve and how they end up. Looking back through time and looking forward, where might we end up? And I also know that I needed boundaries. I desperately needed boundaries. I had crossed some at great personal cost, and I didn't want to do that again. And my attitude was that with no boundaries, it was anarchy. And to give you a parallel example, I was always a lousy songwriter, but I was a terrific song arranger. There was a structure there. I could work within that structure and create something, which is kind of like remodeling. We don't start with a blank sheet of paper. We start with somebody's house and somebody's dreams and take it from there. So I knew who I was, but I didn't know what I would have to do with that information. What do you say, John?
I think the reality is that as we become more sensitive to the truths about ourselves or those insight about ourselves, whether it be the boundaries that are necessary or the I've got to fix it no matter what kind of approach, as we become more familiar with those things in our own lives and actually admit to them, we become better leaders, I think. And we discover sides to ourselves and parts of ourselves that we can commit to other people as well. So I think
Ready to move on?
that's the truth. Yep.
Yep. To those of you who are listening to us, we hope that you grasp two continuing themes through all of our comments. The first one is that the focus is on you. It's up to you. What do you want? How do you want to make it happen? And the second thing is change. Change is insidious. It is constant. It's all around us and it's within us. You cannot be ignored. You can't ignore change. If you do, it's going to lead you down the wrong road. So, John, how did you move forward? What shaped your company? And how did your company shape you?
Yeah, I'd like to say, Jerry, that Waldenwood was shaped in a deliberate manner through lots of long and arduous thought. And unfortunately, I suppose to some extent that's true, but it's also been shaped to a great degree by forces beyond my control. As I talked about a little bit ago, the company really is a mirror of the owner, the ethics, the values, the personality. But maybe what's more visible to the world around us, to our clients and others, it is the people who are on our staff or work with us. I had an expert carpenter who was always exceeding expectations on every job. I never had to wonder if it was going to be taken care of at the job site. You know, things were just cool because he would make sure that the homeowner knew exactly what we had done for the day, what the problems were, where we were going tomorrow, and anything else. And it was always clean when he left the job site. It was one of those people who really had what I would say the right work ethic for being a remodeler, carpenter. Start of the pandemic a couple of years ago. As you know, work came to a grinding halt for all of us. Everybody was trying to figure out the virus impact. Right about that same time, get the call from the carpenter, with me for more than 22 years, and he says, John, I want to talk to you. I'm taking another job. I'm leaving Waldenwood. but you've been like a son to me. We've been through your family suicide. We've been through your divorce. We've been through a dozen significant milestones in your life. How can you do this? And basically darkness settled over the company. And remember, it's pandemic time when we weren't all excited anyway. And I felt like I was looking into that deep hole, that crevasse. So I tried to fix it. Notice that theme? Hey, how about if I meet the salary that the new company is giving you? Fortunately, the employee said, you won't ever be able to do that. You can't afford to do that. Your company can't afford me. So off he went. And I began to call my peers. Hello, Jerry. Who do you recommend? I called friends, relatives, anybody I knew who might know of somebody that was looking for a job. I eventually ended up calling past employees. I hit upon one of the carpenters that we had on staff in the early 2000s. He had left the company and gone on his own and was running a successful remodeling company himself. And I said, would you ever think about coming back? Probably not. I said, well, think about it. A month later, he was leading the carpentry part of our company. You never know when personnel is going to surprise you. You know, projects, skills, and personalities are all part of your company. Sometimes all of that starts to get refocused and readapted because there's that personnel change. It was a pretty dark hole for a while. And yet, do you know, that experience took my company in a direction that we had not explored before. It might be, and could be, that the stuff that's dumped on us that we have no control over might lead us to places yet to be explored. Jerry, what about you? I know you've shared in many articles over the years your company adventures and discoveries. What's been going on over at Roelofs?
Well, when I got into it, my whole deal was I was good for the same job I had when I was 12 years old. Nailing down roof sheeting and picking up the scrap. My asset was physical labor and rudimentary carpentry. I am a strategic optimist. My father's approach to problem solving was, you can't do it and here's why. My approach was, here's the goal. These are the obstacles that need to be overcome. And if we can get through all those, will it be worth it? In spite of my father's negativity, he was really a poor teacher. And so it left it to me to try to sharpen my own axe. So I ended up on the side learning to draw at Votech. I went to community college to study residential design. And I took a lot of sales training. And it all kind of made sense because there were puzzles that I was solving. And I was being given a chance to keep score. There was a client that I met in 1983. I presented a pretty simple bedroom addition with a 3/4 bath. I produced two versions of that. One they could have for 1983. They could have for $23,000. The other one would cost $24,000. They didn't seem to be really blown out, and I had never done this before, but I said, well, I got one other idea, and I'll show it to you, but it's more involved, it's kind of bold, and it's going to cost more money. And I presented a master bedroom suite with a master bath with no doors. Everything was concealed by sight lines, and it was going to cost $34,000. And right then they said, that's what we want. We want to accept that. And I came back and I decided I'm buying into this company. So I wrote my check and and put it on the line. At my father's urging, I joined all the association activities, and that helped me a lot with confidence. Boundaries were always a problem because it's so easy in our business to overpromise and underdeliver, or to pad your resume. We are at a place now that we simply do not write checks that our butt can't cash. And I always tell clients, one of the reasons you should work with me is because I'm extremely confident in what I know, and I am equally confident in what I don't know, because I know where to go to find the answer. So that all worked. We had to manage things. We had to grow it in our management style. One of the columns that I wrote talked about a bathroom where there was a bow in the wall. And I figured that the carpenter could have found it had he looked hard enough, and he could have fixed it for 20 bucks. He didn't though. And so when the sheetrocker came in, he could have fixed it for about 50 bucks because he had to drive his screws through the drywall because he couldn't suck the drywall back to the crooked studs. If he had told the taper about it, the taper could have finished it, figured it out, and probably fixed it for 100 bucks. But he didn't. The carpenter came back, built the tub deck in front of this wall, and couldn't have missed it. The corners were tight, but he was open almost an inch in the middle. Never said a word. Tile setter came in, did all this nice ceramic tile, floated it all out. Work looked great. It was cool. It was the mirror installer who blew the whistle. He could not suck his mirror in to make it look like a funhouse, and the bottom edge of the mirror was going to be exposed almost 3/4 of an inch above the in front of the ceramic tile. So we had to tear it out. Tub got installed on time. The net outcome was it cost $1,350 to fix it, including fixing the scratch in the Whirlpool tub. That's 1980. It was 1992. The reason that is relevant is because we just remodeled that bathroom again and finished it in December. And it cost somewhat more than it did the first time. But in any event, we had to learn those things. We had to understand what it took to understand the cash flow, to understand the outcome of the job as it related to what happened on the job. Our results have been pretty good. We've done something over 2,200 jobs since 1988. We have 90 past customers who have done 3 or more projects with us. And on a 3-year average, we know that our past customers generate 42% of our sales and 49% of our gross profit. So we think we're doing something right. We're trying to get home through that. But that's been part of the journey. We've had staff changes the same way. I was going to tell you that when that carpenter left and he came to work for me, it was just a wonderful thing for the short time that he did. Never mind, John.
Yeah.
So ownership to me, I became decisive when I became the owner, but I don't mean by being the owner, I meant by owning it. Once I understood all that, I could control all those things and it made sense. So that's how we got to where we are.
I think it's a pretty great thing for all of us that life isn't static, that we're not exactly the same as we were a year ago or 2 years ago. And the fact that our companies are a reflection of us as well as the employees can really teach us a ton about who we should be, who we should work with, or who we want to have on our staffs. All of those things kind of go together. And I think that it's a result of not always planning to the nth degree and seeing it come to fruition. Sometimes it's a result of something that's thrust upon us that we had no idea or control over.
Yep.
Jerry?
And that's the whole ballgame. Change is constant. It's around us and within us. Sometimes it is thrust upon us. Sometimes it's something that we've ignored. We've tried to manage by hope, and it finally bites us in the fanny and says, take care of it now. Sometimes it's things that, for lack of a better description, happen as providence or good luck, or in the words of the cryptocurrency commercial, fortune favors the brave. Were you ever overcome by doubt, John? Fear that you wouldn't make it? What were some of the challenges that you faced? And how did you work to overcome them?
Yeah, that's a big one. We all hate to talk about the things that we were pretty stupid about. I mentioned my penchant to be a fix-it guy. I've done that a number of times, tried to do it a number of times. For those of you that are older, you remember the recession of 2007 and following. I was the smart one. I was going to, in fact, outsmart every other remodeler. I was going to keep my office intact. I was going to keep my warehouse intact. I was going to keep my staff intact because I was the smarter guy who was knowing that the recession was going to wane, and I needed to have my company ready to go back up to full steam to do the large additions again, the glitzy kitchens and all that kind of stuff. So in my great wisdom, I borrowed and borrowed and borrowed and continued to borrow. I paid to make up work for my carpenters to keep them on staff. I did the same for design and for bookkeeping and all the rest of it. I paid office rent, on and on and on. And this went on for years until I couldn't even pay the interest on the line of credit bill or the personal lines of credit or the credit cards. And I think at one point, if I recall, we had something over $300,000 in debt, and I couldn't fix it. The recession wasn't a year long. It didn't have a normal rebound. I was not building the additions. I was replacing a screen door. I was putting a window in. I wasn't building that $250,000 project. Even the little vendor bills became almost impossible to pay. This time I wasn't crossing the crevasse, I had fallen in it. The only thing holding me from the bottom was a rope, and it led to one of my clients. I knew from working at his house that his position or his occupation was that he would go around the country to airlines, to clothing manufacturers, to auto companies, and talk to them about whether or not their company should be bankrupt or that there was hope that they could come back to life. Every one of them was in deep straits. And as I recall from his conversations with me about that position, he said oftentimes, most of the times, the companies had to be put to sleep. And he told us stories of big companies that just had gotten too far over the edge. I came away from my initial conversation with that client when I asked him if he would be willing to sit down with me for a lunch and talk about my situation. You know, I'm this big compared to the places that he's dealing with. I had no money to pay him. I had really no hope. He sat down with me for that lunch and said, I think we should meet for a couple of more times. I'd like to kind of get a feel for your company. some months later, I guess it was, we set up the appointment at the bankruptcy attorney's office and went and met with him. My client came with me. He didn't see much hope for Waldenwood at that point. We went in and spent at least an hour, maybe more, listening to the bankruptcy attorney talk about all the procedures that were going to take place when Waldenwood crosses that line. And I came out of that meeting, and I looked at my client and I said, I'm not going there. I can't do that. I've got to try to climb out of the crevasse, but only if you're willing to try to help me develop a plan and work with me side by side. Would you do that? He agreed. It was humbling. The plan that he had for me was something that I never wanted to ever touch. And that was to go around to everybody that I owed money to and talk with them about the situation and to tell them that we had a plan to pay them back in entirety. You know, it took more than 10 years of doing that to really see progress, one debt after another removed from the list. And now 600 and some meetings later from that initial lunch, that client has become my financial advisor. And we continue to meet every week, week in and week out, to plan for every dime of the company finances. We know what's supposed to come in, we know what's supposed to go out, and we know it months and months in advance, all in order to keep us on a financial plane. Lesson to yourself. You never know how deep an economic downturn is going to be. Don't think you can fix it by borrowing money. And just as an aside, same old theme, it doesn't hurt to get help from an expert. Jerry?
You're right. And as I recall from all of our conversations, John and I have known each other for a very long time. You are almost, or you are debt-free. Right?
Yep.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I went through that same thing, and I was going to be equally smart as you. At August 1st of 2008, I told my banker that we were going to have our first $2 million year. The roof caved in. We sold $19,000, the balance of that time. But I was going to keep the team together. I was going to keep everything working right to be ready for that, take advantage of that thing. But it kind of hurts to cut a 12-person company down to 3 people in March of 2009 and still be faced with that big mountain of debt. And as we've talked about this, John, there was a piece of providence in that, because 2 months earlier, St. Louis Park had turned me down on converting a building that I owned in St. Louis Park into an office and showroom. And we were very upset, but the cost would have been terrific. Had we gone ahead with that, we would be under the ground. But they wouldn't let us do it, and we had to contract and do that. So I'm aware how that would be, but I wanted to focus on a couple of NARI stories about trouble and how you deal with trouble. The first was the search for a new EO for Minnesota NARI. When John and the other founding fathers of NARI got together and decided they should have a Minnesota chapter, they effectively hired a secretary to handle the paperwork and the telephone calls and stuff like that. And that didn't work. So they looked around and they found a really capable person who was exactly the right person for what they needed at that time. And everything flourished. By the time I joined the board, I could see that there were chinks in the armor. And we realized that the organization had outdistanced the current EO and their capabilities. And so there came a time that we had to replace that person. We put together a search committee. We interviewed 30 people, some as many as 3 times. We picked a candidate that we thought could solve all the problems that we had as an organization. We hired that person. We're able to pay that person. And they came with great efficiency, but it wasn't too long and we noticed chinks in that armor too. And the chink was they had complete understanding and capability, but they were not the kind of person who they alienated all of the volunteer staff. They treated the volunteers, that person treated the volunteers as employees and underlings and that sort of thing. I, as past president, and Dave Clune as the current president, sat down with that person, talked about the changes that we thought had to be made. We gave it 6 months, and then we gave that person notice and started another search and hired a new EO that stayed there for many years. The other thing is NARI Education Day. Again, John, you were part of NARI Education Day when it was kind of an afternoon and a couple of seminars and that sort of thing, and it grew and grew. And finally, I believe the last event that we had was at a hotel in St. Paul, and we had about 250 people there. We had 7 one-hour classes that were all certified for continuing ed. We had about 30 associate members who had displays. We had served lunch. We had cocktails and hors d'oeuvres at the end of the thing. And we paid for the whole thing and had money left over. And it was 2 weeks later that I got the privilege of writing to the membership that we were discontinuing NARI Education Day. And the reason for it wasn't that it wasn't making any money. It's that it took too big a burden out of from the volunteers who worked to carry it off. So the lesson in this about NARI is that sometimes you do things wrong and you got to fix it and accept the change or change course. And sometimes when you do things absolutely right, it may not work out. And you need to be decisive, accept it, and change directions. So we got to be decisive. We have to face those challenges when they come up. If we face them, we can get through them. If we ignore them, they're just going to eat our lunch. John?
Getting to the edge is pretty easy, isn't it? In our own lives, in our businesses. And I don't think we're always willing to admit that we made some significant mistakes and sometimes face the overwhelming outside forces that brought us to that point in a probably not smart way. The question becomes, like you said, Jerry, what do we do now? Do I have the moxie? Can I get the help that I need? Am I willing to face those challenges? And sometimes the answer is no, and other times, it can lead us to new heights.
That's for sure. So where does this get us? We have finite resources. We have limitations on our people. We have limitations on our own. And a quote from Buddha is that the problem is you think you have the time. The end is coming, John. What does your off ramp look like?
Yeah, I suppose you want me to talk about what it's like to be one of the oldest NARI members. What are my plans, huh? Well, like so many things in my life, I'm still trying to figure it out. Once I started seeing some financial health in the company, it was a lot easier to begin thinking about the end game. Well, probably primarily because I thought the company would be more saleable. I started thinking about the transition with my own kids. Wouldn't it be great if one of my kids would take over the company and just keep it going along on a smooth pace. And wouldn't that be great for my clients? And wouldn't that be great for the legacy? Not so much. Kids weren't interested. So then we thought, well, let's do the business broker routine. Had some 25 conversations with people about Waldenwood and how it would fit with their companies and so on. I had conversations over the years with remodelers, NARI remodelers, about merging. I talked to my employees about them buying out the company. In some cases, I've had realtors ask me about taking over the company. You know, beginning to kind of believe that the experience of the end game is a bit like trying to summit Mount Rainier. You train and you go over to the mountain and do some practice hikes. You test out your equipment, and all the while you're kind of keeping that goal in mind. I went through that routine several times. I met my guide. I got roped up. I climbed 5,000 feet to a hut at the 10,000 foot level of the mountain, where you're supposed to rest for a few hours and get rehydrated. Each time I got that far and unable to go any further because the weather turned bad and the guide service would not proceed up towards the summit. The end game seems a little bit like that to me. It has stops and starts. Each time when something doesn't seem to kind of work out and I get excited about the conversation that I've had, I get really disappointed. I think that's part of it. But I'm also a little better equipped for the next conversation. I've learned that that end game plan, for that to work, you know, a ton of things need to go right and need to fall in place. And the likelihood of that happening in the blink of an eye or a snap of a finger probably isn't going to happen. It takes years. So I guess, you know, as I think about where I'm at in it, one of the things I've learned is I wish I could have started working on the end game earlier, started the conversations with everybody. But, you know, I was at a place where I wasn't confident that I would survive in my company because of the debt load, and getting that to that point where that was manageable freed me up to start thinking about the larger view of the company and of my life. Jerry?
You even teased me about I should buy your company,
I did.
and it's not going to happen. I'm sorry, pal, but
Well, we'll talk after this.
yeah, tomorrow at lunch. I know.
Yeah.
Even in the best situation and circumstances, transition takes a long time. I bought my father out, but it took 2 years of negotiation and then 2 years to disengage. So a long drawn out process. But I paid the bill and moved on. My situation is different than yours, John, and everybody else. Andy, my son, has been with me since 2002. I had the privilege of laying him off in 2008 and rehiring him in 2010. But he's been, since 2010, he's been at the side working on the sites and that sort of thing. We've been slowly grooming him. We have a bi-weekly meeting called a Horizon meeting to talk about what do you feel comfortable with, what don't you feel comfortable with. Current plan is that as of January 1st of 2022, he gets 49% of the company. On January 1st of 2003, he gets 2%, so he becomes the majority stakeholder. These are not finalized. This is the plan. We've agreed to it. We're just waiting on the accountant wants a business valuation so he knows what he's doing for taxes. And then beyond that, he'll buy the rest. I fully intend to continue working to support him in whatever his objectives and his visions are. He knows the job site processes inside and out. He understands and is very competent in estimating. He has growing confidence in his understanding of financials. He does have limited design capability. His challenge, I guess, is that he's not sure of his vision. But I know that personally he's leaning to having single trade work be more of a factor in the future of the company. Clients like his communication and his attentiveness to their needs. And we think it all bodes well. He works hard, that sort of thing. And one of the things about me is that it's always been about money. And so whether it's design, build, remodeling, or whether it's roofing and siding and that sort of thing, I can support that whichever way he goes. So my road is perhaps far better outlined than yours is.
You bet.
I like it that way.
You bet. I think one of the greatest things about our industry, Jerry, is that you and I don't have to turn in our shields, so to speak, at our age. We can really continue working as long as we're interested in doing so and comfortable in those aspects of it that we can handle and that are meaningful to our lives. And I think that's maybe something that all of us can kind of latch onto and, so to speak, move forward with, because it really doesn't have to stop at 65 or 70 or whatever. We certainly can find areas in our work that are meaningful to us and that we provide value to others as well.
You know, it's always shocked me that my father quit cold turkey December 31st, 1997. And that was it. And never looked back. And I can't imagine that. I just can't. So for some, it's reaching the destination that gives us satisfaction. For others, it's the journey to the destination that gives you its rewards. John, what's been the best part for you?
Well, I think I can illustrate pretty easily that it's a combination. I was building a new house on Lotus Lake in Chanhassen, my company was. I was up on the second story roof looking at something, I can't even remember what, but it had been raining that week, not that particular day, but during the week, and mud was everywhere around this new house. And we had laid down 2x10 planks around the house to walk on to try to keep some of the mud from getting tracked everywhere. I had an extension ladder up on that roof to the roof and was on my way down. I had followed another carpenter down. And as I stepped on the ladder, the mud gave way and the ladder moved and I went backwards and fell the 2 stories onto my back. And it would have been better, but had I landed in the mud, but I landed on one of those planks. So I got busted up pretty bad and ended up in the hospital. While I was there, I began to fret about what was going to happen to my job sites, who's going to meet the customers, what about this, what about that? And I was a mess, not only because of the hospitalization and the hurt and all of the rest of it, but also because I was losing control of what was going on. I got a call in the hospital from a peer, and he said, "What do you need? We'll take care of it for you." give me the list. And you know, that's a great thing when something like that happens. The call from the peer. I was sent home from the hospital with instructions to walk every day. I really didn't do that. I hated it because it hurt. Somehow, one of the NARI past presidents heard that I was supposed to be doing that and knew that I wasn't. And he called one day and said, I'm going to walk you. And he made it his mission to make sure that I would get out and move around and walk. You know, as I think about this industry, Waldenwood in the industry, some of the most rewarding parts are the people for one reason or another who have accepted my brokenness and have stood by me with outstretched hands. Some I met at NARI and have been meeting with for over 25 years, week after week. For whatever reason, they saw me as not competition, but as a friend. It's lonely owning a company. It's hard to find a safe place to talk about what's really going on. But how wonderful to have a group of peers to say and to talk about and to admit that I've had it. I can't figure this out, or whatever it might be. The realization that you're not alone to this summit, so to speak, is extremely affirming and redemptive. I know, Jerry, your journey has been touched by some lives too, but a different population and in a different manner. Tell us about it.
Well, they've been a lot of the same lives for all the years that you and I and the rest of the guys who talk every Wednesday. That's a great camaraderie. But from my side, besides the money being the best thing, the best part for me has been intersecting with people in their lives, in their homes, their sanctuary. In a family room where kids and parents share a movie and popcorn. Or in a living room where a parent comforts a child from a broken heart. To a kitchen where there's laughter and celebration. Into a kitchen where a husband and wife nod quietly as they agree that it's time to end their marriage. Those are the stages on which people live their lives. They're intimate, they're compelling, and my work is a part of their humanity. And that means the world to me. John?
You know, the reality is, go ahead, Jerry.
No, go ahead.
The reality is that we've discovered through these jobs that we've had and these companies that we've owned, that we really have been able to be not only touched, but we've been able to touch others to some extreme depths. And as a result, the journey's been what I would call a wonderful experience.
I agree. So for those of you who are still with us, we'll close with the second idea. My life is better for knowing John Miller. For all these years, John, goes without saying, my life is better. And I want to make clear to you that neither of us is over the hill or not in our prime. And finally, every company starts as a gamble. Every successful company is started by someone who made a bet. It was a good bet. They bet on themselves and they won big. So back to, who are you? Are you willing to bet on yourself? It's out there. You can have it. There we have it. Time for Q&A. If you got some, Jerry?
I do have a couple. First of all, thank you, gentlemen. That was great to listen to, and super insightful. So thank you very much. Going back to really at the very beginning, the first question is for John. You were talking about struggling with some software the other day and how you had to call the helpline. In your business, and as you've gone through this, how has NARI been your helpline?
Good question. I guess I go back to the early days, back in late 80s, early 90s. I was new to remodeling. I knew basically nothing. I knew how to work with my tools. I knew how to build an addition on a house because I had done that as a hobby out in Yakima. I felt confident using tools because my dad had instilled that in me as I was growing up. I knew how to use all these tools. What I didn't know was how to be a remodeler. And I think I wanted to hang out with people who were doing it. And I didn't know any other way than to look up the remodeling associations, and somehow got attached to the to NARI and went from there. I jumped in after Marty Scherber sat with me a number of meetings around the dinner table because I knew nobody, and I was scared to beat the band, to be sitting around groups of people that I didn't know. And Marty was able to help me get over that part and got me involved, I think, with everything from the program committee on all the way up to the national part of it. And he was the inspiration to just keep going and keep working through the organization. And then, of course, as a result, got involved with the education committee and started planning these seminars. And I know that I was always sensitive to what I didn't know, and it would be helpful to have this kind of speaker come and so forth. I don't
No,
know if
that's
that
great. That's
answered-
great. I think Marty has sat with many a remodelers in this town, from the sounds of it, from the conversations I've had. John, or excuse me, Jerry, a question for you. You were talking earlier about why clients should hire you, and you said your statement was something along the lines of because of what you do know and because of what you don't know. What would you say to a contractor, especially younger, newer ones starting out that don't know everything and get put in a position where that client asks about something and we've all been there, you panic, I don't know the answer. How do they handle that? What should they do?
It's that's one of those insidious things about you want to look professional, so you're going to fake it, you're going to wing it, you're going to do whatever you can because you don't want to admit that you don't know. And a lot of times I think that we think that ignorance equates to being stupid. And ignorance has nothing to do with stupidity. It has to do with not knowing. And so the statement that I would say is admit it, but I'll look into it. I'll try to find out. And like I said, where I'm at, lo, these many years later, is I'm extremely confident with what I know, but I'm also equally confident. What would we do about that? You know, I really don't know, but I know who I can ask. And
Love it.
move right on. It's hard because you got to say that from a position of confidence. You can't, geez, I never thought about that before.
Oh, that's a great answer. I love that. And for everybody who's with us this evening, we do have time for just a few more questions, so please keep them coming. I'm going to throw this one out, either John or Jerry, with whoever's most comfortable wanting to tackle it. Predictions, the future. Where do you guys see things going in the remodeling industry here in the Twin Cities?
Go ahead, Jared.
I think reading what the scribes say and thinking what the people that I'm talking to currently, and it's February, and we have a mountain of leads. As we're talking to a lot of people about a lot of things. I think that there's still a very strong sense that it's a good thing to do. You know, when on March 13th of 2020, that's when all the hospitals closed out of elective surgeries, and we thought the end was near. And I know Miller and I and our group of friends talked about it. Oh man, what are we going to do? How are we going to get through this? But we also know that by April 30th, 6 weeks later, the telephone was ringing off the wall because people needed stuff and they wanted to do stuff and they couldn't spend their money anyplace else. And so I think that that trend is going to continue. I do believe that we are going to see less sweeping revision type work. I think that we're going to see a lot more projects that are smaller scale. It's going to be the kitchen. It's not going to be the room addition, family room and kitchen. It's going to be a bathroom. It's going to be this. I think that people are going to be a little bit guarded. And we're all still waiting. You know, we were in a situation 2 years ago where we kept thinking about a finish line. In 2 weeks, it'll be better. In 2 months, it'll be better.
Sure.
And nobody talks about the finish line anymore because we don't see one. We don't know where it's going to be. And we have all kind of taken that into our souls and said, this is going to be with us for quite a while. We have to make adaptation. We have to adapt our behavior and make it work. Client I met today and working from home, never plans to go back. And the company's perfectly good with it because they track her keystrokes and they know that she's more productive in 6 hours than she would be in 8 hours in the office, and she's not driving or parking.
True.
I
Very
just
true.
want to add, Jerry, that I think one of the things that longevity in any business gives you is a really broad perspective. And I guess I'll throw a little bit of cold water on the whole thing by saying that, you know, there were a number of downturns over the years that I've been working, and a number of high points. And I think we better just realize that it's never as good as it seems, nor as bad as it seems. There's, you know, there's the mountains as well as the valleys, and we'll have some valleys coming up to go along with the mountains that we're experiencing these
Yep.
days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gentlemen, we got time for probably one more question here, and I'm going to throw this out. Would love to hear a response from both of you in a timely fashion here. At some point in your presentation, you both talked about some point being overwhelmed with the business, whether it be a situation or just the business in general. What would you recommend to an upcoming contractor or even an experienced established contractor that hits that point where they just feel overwhelmed with their company? They feel like they don't have a way out. They don't know where to find that help. What would your recommendations be to somebody? Jerry, you want to go first?
I'll try, but Miller's the guy who should answer this question because it's all about community and support. And so if you're in an RE meeting and you sat at dinner with Joe or whatever it is, call Joe, reach out. I'm struggling with something here and build, it's unfortunate. You got to build a network before you can use it. But that's one of the big assets of NARI, is that it gives you a network that you can reach out to. And I have, has John, in all the people that you've asked for help or hand, has anybody said, screw you, I'm not helping you? Has anybody ever said that? They've generally said, I've had the same experience and here's what I did. I don't know if that'll work for you, but try this, or go
Very
talk
true.
to that person.
John, how about you?
Yeah, I think Jerry is right on. You really can't get the help until you know somebody well enough that you can say, my life is shit right now and I need help. I can't figure out how to get from point A to point B in my company, and we're just on the edge. And you really can't do that until you're comfortable with somebody. And I think you either get to the point of really being desperate like I was, and you go to anybody you think of that can help you, or you gradually become comfortable with somebody that you dare ask and share sort of the situation with. I think of vendors, you might be even more alone as a vendor than we are as corporate owners for remodeling companies, because most of the time, or oftentimes, you're not going to be turning around and going to the boss and saying, this is whatever, and who do you have to share with? And I would say it's just equally important for you to find that safe place within peers or within somewhere to be able to get that help and to get that redemption, if that might be it, but also to get that affirmation. So.
Great, thank you. We've got just a minute or so left. Gentlemen, any last parting words of wisdom for us tonight?
Jerry always has one. I
My
think-
parting word of wisdom is, my life is better for knowing John Miller. I mean that, pal. I will tell the guys that tomorrow at lunch.
Thank you. One of the things Jerry and I did talk about, that's pretty sad, actually. Early on, he and I were talking about the fact that in our careers, we didn't have mentors or elderly remodelers, let's call it, in the association that were people who shared their lives with us. And I think that might be something that I hope for the future, that as you as company owners and vendors, and as you are part of the association over a period of time, and you become the elders, that you share, because it's a wonderful thing to have that kind of ability to hear that people have lived through it and they can get through it, and that the industry as a whole can be a wonderful experience. And so I covet that for you as you age as well.
We appreciate that.
Can I say one more thing?
No, go ahead, Jeff.
I think John will agree with me. He wrote me into this deal, but this week and a half of playing the tapes and going through our own personal history has been delightful. It's been terrific. So thanks for the opportunity.
Well, we're thankful that you guys were able to join us tonight and share those nuggets with us. I think we all are able to take away a little something for it. So from all of us here, thank you very much. For everybody who's joining us tonight, don't forget, we do want to remind you, our next event one last time, April 12th at Bolero in Eden Prairie. Gentlemen, I hope you might be able to join us. We're going to be in person, everybody. So keep our fingers crossed, be positive and optimistic. We'll be in person as usual. Surveys will be coming out. Please, as the chairman of the Program and Education Committee, I really do want to see what you guys and gals have to say on those surveys. That really gives us some direction on what kind of programs to put together for everybody. But on behalf of myself, everybody in the Education Committee and the board, I want to thank everybody again. Jerry, John, thank you very much. And everybody have a great evening. We appreciate it. Good night, everybody.